in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What draws behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hey, Dr. Thunder, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Maybe the camera will come on at some point, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe it won't, but either way, the show must go on. So, speaking of the show, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And today we're going to continue the conversation we started out last week, but let's get a couple of important things out of the way. Meaning, go ahead and click that like button. All right. Click the share button. Share the stream. Support the stream. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Click the notification button twice. So we started out last week talking about stress-free productivity. Okay. Dr. Thunder was calling cap on what Mr. David here was saying. Okay. But we're going to continue with the conversation. But before we go there, Dr. Thunder, I wanted to, let me see, hold on, let me pause that. Bada boom, bada bing. Now, perhaps we can bring ourselves back up to speed with what's going on here, right? So we see the topic, stress-free productivity. It already sounds a little weird. But then again, anyone who's trying to reduce their stress is looking for stress-free productivity. I mean, you got to be productive in the world, presumably, right? And if you're trying to reduce your stress, you're still trying to be productive. Okay, blah, blah, blah. But Dr. Thunder, let's do this. I'm going to say a couple of things and you'll let me know if it jives with what the guy has said so far. Okay, so the one thing is he said something about being actively engaged with the tasks that you need to do, actively engaged with your life. And being actively engaged means you take it out of your head and you put it in the system. So far, so good?
Yeah, and it's like he said something about not being inappropriately engaged or something, or he had a weird way
appropriately engaged.
Yeah.
Appropriately engaged is what he says versus inappropriately engaged. And
right.
Being appropriately engaged means you got it in a system, right? It's out of your head, right? And it's in a system. It's in a calendar. You've paid the accountant. You've set something, an appointment, right? You got the balls rolling. So presumably, stress is caused when the stuff is in your head, right? When the stuff is not in a calendar and it's not in a system and you don't have it in a date and you don't have a machine already built, right? That's when it is in your head and you're having sleepless nights. And so is that also true?
Yeah, I think when you don't do a good job of documenting the various things, I think that it robs your ability to rest well, because you're always kind of like thinking, well, when is the other shoe going to drop? When is the next thing going to happen that I forgot about? It turns into that. So it makes it hard to be in the moment.
Gotcha. Do you experience that kind of stuff? Now, generally speaking, I know that you're a big calendar guy, right? But do you experience what you just described? When's the other shoe going to drop? Or what's the other thing I forgot about? so you can relate with what you just said, or no?
Yeah, I mean, I've told folks this. You're not born organized or born disciplined. It's something that you have to sort of become. And the reason I know about that is because I've I've been on this sort of journey of you know displacing that, you know that replacing it with being more disciplined, being more structured, so that I have less situations where I'm not totally like aware of everything that's going on and can fully participate. Because prior to that, it was, and this is a long time ago, but prior to that, it was really, really challenging. And, if I'm honest, every once in a while, I'll notice that something slips through. Doesn't happen too terribly often, but I'll notice that. And then that causes me to think, okay, what happened that allowed that to get through? Because I need to make sure I fix that. Because you want to have confidence in the system. If you don't have confidence in the system,
you're back to stress.
That's right. You're in trouble again. Yeah.
Gotcha. So this appropriate engagement, now the place where you were kind of calling Cap is, now he didn't put it this quite way, but he appropriate engagement is similar to being in the zone in what I will call an analogical way. He did not explain the similarity, and maybe we'll get to it. But remember, he started this talk by talking about him almost capsizing in sea, right? At sea with his wife, right? There's a storm. Things are looking bad. The Coast Guard rescue team will not be able to get there on time. And then, okay, cool. So he got to task, right? He started doing what he had to do, dropping anchor, doing whatever. And then he realized at some point that he was in the zone. He stopped and he looked at the moon. He said him and his wife stopped and looked at the moon. It was a beautiful moon, and they were both in the zone. So they were both actively or appropriately engaged, right, with the task right in front of them, right? They were in it, and they were in the zone, and it was a stress-free, shall we say, situation. So that is the part that takes a little bit of a stretch. But let's go ahead, okay, and continue. So far, it is not crazy to say that if you have a system, then you're less stressful. And then hence, the whole point of your stress is the fact that you don't have a system. The whole point of your stress is that you are keeping things in your head. But let's continue with this talk by Mr. David Allen. He's the writer of a book called Getting Things Done.
Aside from listening to me, and even have any strategic and important stuff on your mind? Well, interestingly, the more it's on your mind, the more it's not happening. The more you are inappropriately engaged with it. Why? It's not on cruise control. It's only on your mind because there's still some thinking or some decisions about that you haven't made, or you haven't parked the results of that into some trusted systemic process that you trust will be triggered at the right time in the right way. Yeah. You actually don't have to finish those things, folks, to be appropriately engaged and get them off your mind. But there are very specific things that you do need to do about that. So there's a number of paradoxes, by the way, that happen about all this material. There's some counterintuitive things about what I'm going to be sharing with you in the next few minutes. You're going to need to get comfortable with that if you want to get to this place of productive engagement without a crisis forcing you to do that. The big paradox is that all the complexities and all the stuff of your life, in order to manage that, you just need 3 core principles that you understand and apply. It's not about a new smartphone. It's not about a new elegant planner. It's not about a new piece of software. Those are cool tools, but only insofar as you use them to apply those key principles. Once you get those principles, you can make your own system. A second paradox here is that the initial moves and behaviors and best practices of this may very likely, for many of you, initially feel very awkward, very unnatural, and even unnecessary. It's exactly like learning moves in the martial art, which I did years ago. If you want to learn how to maximally produce power with a karate punch, you're going to have to spend hundreds of hours doing something that feels very awkward and very unnatural as a movement. Hundreds of hours doing that. Once you do that, by the way, you'll never go back to anything less in terms of producing power. Some of the things I'll be recommending will be just like that. For instance, don't keep anything in your head the rest of your life. That's going to feel unnatural, awkward, and unnecessary. Every single thing you're committed to finish that takes more than one step to finish it, you need to clarify exactly what that outcome and project is and put that on a project list that you look at least once a week. Every single next action you need to take about any of your commitments that you're involved in, you need to clarify those and park those in appropriate places that you're going to see those actions on a regular basis. That's going to feel awkward, unnatural, and unnecessary. But the final paradox of all of this, wrap all that together, is that some very specific but seemingly mundane behaviors, when applied, produce the capacity for you to exist in a kind of sophisticated spontaneity, which, in my experience, is a key element to a successful life. Now,
Any comments there, Dr. Thunder, about the paradoxes? I think that we explained that first paradox that he talked about, which is that, hey, you don't have to complete these tasks in order to be appropriately engaged with them. You know, we explained that basically this, and then he went ahead and said that the stress is being caused by the fact that you don't have a system, a trusted system. He actually also used that term, right? That you got to trust the system, right? You get that. That's why you got to reiterate. You got to go through, check what fell through, make sure that it doesn't fall through again, right? And then if you do trust the system, if you have faith in the system, your blood pressure will go down, and you're well on your way to being productive there. But any thoughts or any added comments to the things he has said so far, or the things that he has added, I should say?
Yeah, and in general, one of the things I was calling Cap on before is this idea that if, you know, basically he's going to show you how to do this thing, you know, you have to be serious about it, but then once you get it, then you're never going to lose it, kind of a thing. Yeah, I don't, I'm sorry. I just don't, I don't buy that.
If you were selling this, how would you sell it? Because some of this stuff is marketing, right? So
well,
if you're selling me a skill, how would you sell it?
Well, it is, and I suppose hyperbole is part of selling something, or can be. I don't know. I just I'm a little bit sensitive to some of these sort of strategies that are used to convince people, stuff like take this pill, sit on the couch, and lose the weight. You don't have to change your diet. You don't have to do anything. Just, you know, I'm a little sensitive to that, you know, sort of thing. So when something starts to sound a little bit like there's not going to be as much effort involved forever and ever, amen, because there is such a thing as gravity. You know, it's a little bit like him suggesting that, you know, I am going to, you know, I'm going to teach you how to fly. And once you learn how to fly, you'll never come down. So, well, yeah, you're going to come down. That's kind of how that works. And even if you were doing something like gliding, and you can glide for a long time without coming down, there would be so much effort and like expertise involved in being able to continue to maintain, you know, and follow the weather patterns, and, you know, get above the clouds, and, you know, and all the things that you'd have to do to be able to stay up there. there's a lot of effort involved in that.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Interesting. So, I'm tempted to kind of do a therapy session here and be like, well, why are you so sensitive about that? Like, well, it sounds like somebody told you something once, your childhood, and you're like, oh, never again. I would never be deceived about this thing. But it is interesting too. The reason I'm asking is it's interesting to kind of because part of I mentioned marketing, but then there's a just purely informational aspect. There's a truth of it. So if you're writing a textbook of the truth of what experiencing learning and then having to keep up with the learning, right? Which is similar to what we're saying, right? You learn something. The muscle memory is there. You have other memory, and then but you have to keep up. You gotta stay on top of it. You have to actively you got to wake up in the morning, go to the gym or read the book or whatever it may be, right? It's things, entropy or gravity, localized here on Earth. Gravity is pulling things down. Entropy is disorganizing things. And how then do you, let's say we're talking about this skill of calendars, right? Because it's very, it's directly tied to what he's saying. He's saying, hey, we got to systematize things. So if you're telling somebody, okay, use a calendar, how do you make it such that you're not telling him, oh, just do this and everything will be forever solved? I think you already took one step in that direction by saying you do have to reiterate, you do have to revise the system every once in a while because things will fall through the cracks. Anything else to add on the part of updating? Because that's one thing I'm getting from you. It's got to be updated. You got to revamp. You got to restart the freaking stove every time, or restart the car. It's not just going to be on cruise control. Anything else to add on that?
yeah, updating, revising, accommodating new interests, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's the main maintenance, but then there's just the energy that goes into it. It's not a one time, if I put the effort in right now, I put the energy in now. What is this? What's the cold fusion? I've created cold fusion now, and now it's forever sustaining
Okay.
energy.
I'm starting to find an analogy in my head. What I mean by that is something that's analogously annoying to me in a very, very similar way. And it has to do with what you just said about the energy, right? When people just say, oh, how about windmills or how about this? It's like, well, you have to consider density. You got one can of gasoline, okay? That's a very small. What is one can? 1 quart, let's say, right, of gasoline. That's a very small volume, but there's a lot of energy in there compared to what you would need, the space you would need for wind, right? And there's certain other kind of factors like that. So the fact that you mentioned that, yes, it does make sense that some people just tend to they'll have this kind of one button, push this easy button, and everything is solved, right? I'll go ahead and do this, and everything is solved. But due to a lack of understanding. But you see, it's interesting because mine, I was like, okay, the excuse is, okay, well, they don't understand. They don't know some physics. They haven't studied this. It's politically, shall we say, enticing to have some kinds of weird positions that are based not on scientific understanding. But I think it's also enticing, right, to base certain beliefs of wanting to improve, wanting to get to Valhalla, wanting to be productive, wanting to be Buddha, Jesus, and whomever else wrapped into one, well, without actually doing any, just come to this conference and okay, cool. It's starting to make sense, right? More and more as to what you need to tell people so they don't fall in this trap. And here's another thing, perhaps, okay, and I didn't anticipate this, but this particular issue here is key. Now, you don't fall for that trap though, Dr. Thunder, right? Like if I came to you now and I told you, hey, you know what? You're gonna need to do these steps, right? There's this meditation practice I have for you, blah, blah, blah. You're not gonna think, oh, if I just did this tomorrow, the rest of my life is gonna be great, right? So, or you don't, right? Or let me let you answer.
No.
Okay, so
I
you don't. Okay. It's interesting because I don't too, but I never quite noticed, or I never quite, it never came to mind that, oh, people are doing that out there, and it's crazy and it's annoying.
All the
What are you?
freaking
Where are you
time.
noticing this? Oh, okay. Was this is it
All
a
the freaking
musician
time.
thing or something? Come on, tell me, dude.
Yeah, it's a okay. So here's an example of this. So often is the case that I have noticed that students do not have an adequate sense of the amount of work involved in excelling at anything, even if that thing is creative, right? So, one thing I noticed is like in the arts, it seems like a disproportionate number of the students they want an arts degree because they think that the arts degree is going to essentially is going to be less effort. Now, that's not what they say, right? But, you know, if you're going to be artistic and, spontaneous and all this, right? Spontaneous, you just do what you feel, right? And then the tendency is to cite anomalies in order to justify, to sort of bolster your view and to sort of justify your kind of lazy approach of to what you're doing. I've said this on this
Gotcha.
program
So
before.
by
Go ahead.
anomalies, you mean they're going to cite some genius that sat on his couch all day and produced masterpieces, and all of a sudden they're
Right.
going to be that too, right?
Right. Exactly. And or
And you have,
false.
and the thing is, those stories are, you don't know how that guy made those masterpieces, right? You know what I mean? Anyways, go ahead.
Right. And often is the case that okay, this is a little bit of a tangent. I have noticed that I'd say a healthy portion of those, strange geniuses that tell everybody that they didn't even try and it was just easy to do. Actually, they spent a lot of time developing their skills to be able to do the thing. Sometimes people they want to appear like they have something at a greater degree than you do. Like you'll never be able to catch them. When behind the scenes they're like working like a dog, trying to maintain that edge. Now there are some weird, strange folks. One of my teachers told me a story about a guy that he went to school with that basically never went to school, never went to class, rather. I mean, they're in college. And he had a photographic memory. So he would just look at the books, never went to class, and would just go in and ace all the tests. But that was also accompanied by him sleeping an inordinate amount of time. Like this guy was sleeping 14, 16 hours a day, 18 hours. They'd like wake him up and say, "Hey, you have a test today." And then he'd go and ace the test. So there are some strange folks like that, but usually that capability is accompanied by a massive deficit somewhere else.
Indeed. Okay, cool. So I think we're making some good headway here, and I'm going to speculate also as to why maybe I didn't notice certain things, because in the realm of education, for example, right, people don't go into engineering because they think it's easy, right? They're not like, this is not the it's not the place where they're gonna go hide from effort. It's all effort. There is no, it's, there is creativity, but that's after you graduate. People like, and that's where it's creativity. It's in the margins. It's where how you make your money, basically, right? You're gonna come up with something a little bit more creative, and creative in a narrow sense. Okay, narrow sense meaning some kind of unusual solution to a problem, right? Or shall we say solution to an unusual problem. So I didn't really have around me, for the most part, people who were thinking that they're gonna pull something, just some crazy stuff like that. And then in the previous example that I gave, in terms of, oh, push this button and energy will be solved, and push that button and global this will be solved, or whatever it may be. Again, coming from a scientific background, it was just kind of second nature to me that no, things are quantitative and they're factors. Trees don't grow to the sky, right? That's one. It seems like a tangent there, but one thing that people tend to think is they just think if a line is going up, it's just going to keep on going up forever. Or like, it's like there's no limits, or there's no feedback loops, or certain kinds of limits to nature. It's like a tree is going to keep on growing, right? It starts growing, and if you look at it, and if you had this kind of crazy projection, you think it's just going to grow forever, but no, it stops, right? Things do stop. So this is quite key. Let me repeat to myself, students and many other people thinking that they're going to be able to BS, or not put in as much effort and then maybe succeed, excel at a particular skill. Okay. And then these people maybe, I'm sure you hear them, right, talking about all these different secrets that they've learned, or that is out there somewhere, that, oh, I heard if you do this, I heard if you do that, then it'll be all solved, and going around jerking each other like that.
Yeah, look, man, it's one of the reasons why I avoid presenting information to my students. Say I'm in a private lesson, an applied lesson, right? It's one-on-one instruction, and the student is asking me some questions about a particular approach to doing something. I'm always resistant to present it as a trick. Here, check out this trick, or here, check out this. Here's a secret. Here's a code right here. Get this. I always I don't want to do that, because I don't want them to think that now they don't have to work as hard, or I found the cheat code. Now the rest of this is going to be on easy mode. No, that's not what it is. I've found that I'm very generous with information, so I don't hide anything from students. There's a lot of teachers that don't take that approach. They will sort of here's the stuff that, this is the curriculum, this is the stuff I'm going to teach you. Here's my secret stuff. This is the stuff that I'll never tell you. This is the stuff that separates me from you. After all, especially when you're thinking about teaching someone that plays the same instrument, you're teaching your competitor, right, at one level, right? So if you say there's a finite number of gigs, and I teach the student all the stuff I know, now they're going to be able to go and hustle those same gigs, right? So I think that's a calculus that some teachers take more seriously. I never worry about that. My thing is, if I'm still doing the level of gigs that I'm going to get, put to the side by a student of mine, maybe I shouldn't be doing those gigs anymore anyway. I should be moving on to some other stuff, right? So that should never really be an issue. And I'm always going to outwork, any student that I have. I just tend to outwork people.
That is your secret, huh?
Right. So if there is a secret, it's more effort, and it never ends. It's maybe a perspective on things. I mean, the evidence that you actually love this is that doesn't even bother you.
Wow.
Oh, I have to work.
Yeah.
Yo, go ahead.
This is very interesting, because you're talking about being exposed to. I can't even imagine, man. You're exposed to these students. That's crazy. Like, I never thought about that. But some things are are completely jiving. Like, for example, the fact that things take effort, it's not something I think about because, I'm just always busy, right? And I couldn't help myself, right? Like, if anything, some people are telling me to slow down, right? Like,
Right.
maybe you
Right.
need to stop and smell the coffee every once in a while. So, um, but if I were in a classroom with students, yeah, I would notice that people do. It does make sense. Something else you mentioned, okay, which is that people who may be good at something, make cap as to how much effort they put in to be good at it, or B, just don't know that. They're not
Oh
trying to
yeah. Oh
lie.
yeah. Right.
They don't know the effort. For example, the example I just gave, like me, like I'm working all the time and I don't know to mention it because it's just like, well, it's what you do, right? Secondly, let's say it's writing, right? Let's say um, I'm decent at writing, but I never quite thought that I practiced it. But then I do a lot of listening, a lot of reading, and I'm very, very into sentence construction and a lot, not in a formal way, right? You know what I mean? So just because I'm not formally doing it, I may not even realize the hours and hours and hours of practice and
Oh right.
thinking about, yeah, that the normal person just does not do. So, yeah,
Yeah.
these are,
This is case in point. You're talking about like basically being critical of your trying to improve as a writer, trying to be clearer,
mhm,
cut out more of the fluff, get straight to the point, say things, in a very easy to understand, less convoluted, less repeating yourself, more distilled, more potent, you know, that kind of thing. And that's like that's something that takes a long time to develop. I'll tell you one way that I have continued to improve my writing uh, is, and I don't do this as much now because I do a lot of streaming, and so a lot of my ideas I'm getting out sort of spontaneously. Uh,
mhm,
but I used to do a lot of writing, pretty lengthy Facebook posts, and I was doing this. A
mhm,
lot of these I was writing them when I was putting my son to bed, and this is when he was still of the age where I needed to stay in his room, or else or he'd come out of the room and stuff like that. So I'd be sitting in there and I'm just writing the stuff, and I'm not thinking of that as being
mhm.
work or effort or anything at all, right? But I spent a lot of hours doing that, and I would say that my writing is a lot more clear
Mhm.
now than it was, even back then. So
Mhm.
anyhow,
I see. Endless effort. That'll be your marketing banner. As opposed to just do it once, and once you learn that karate punch, it's all over. It's like, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and click that like button. Okay, share the stream,
but
click the subscribe button. Were you gonna say something? Go ahead.
yeah, but there is this. So there's like the different approaches, right? And I'm not going to say that his approach is 100% cheesecake approach. I do think that he is representing some sort of effort, but just not a continuous effort, right? So,
Yeah, he's
um,
promising them that if they do these first awkward things, which he rather than say effort, he's saying it's going to be awkward, which is just a way of saying, yeah, it's going to be hard, right? But here's the thing, like it's kind of interesting that you're pointing it out because I noticed that in these when people say stuff like this. Okay, I knew from the first time because we got that far last week when when I saw him saying the awkward things people are going to need to do, I immediately recognized it as a way of him hiding the work. Like, oh, just it's gonna be
right.
hard for the, but once you get, it's like, okay, this thing
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's well, look, man, it's the just do something for 28 days and it becomes a routine and then it's easy. People say that, or that whole, as long as you can get yourself to the gym, then most of the work is already done. It's like, well, what are you doing when you go to the gym? Because that ain't the work. The the work is all that sweating and wanting to quit after every exercise. That's so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But it's like, but we have all of these sort of ways of fooling ourselves, or trying to fool ourselves, into doing things. Um, but I'll tell you, one of the reasons I think that we're in such an epidemic of people being, you know, questioning their, everything that they're doing, questioning their relationships, questioning their careers, questioning, everything all the time, is because we have bought this idea that evidence that you're doing the right things is that it's not going to be like work. It's going to be like
Mm-hmm.
effortless. Oh, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be easy. Everything goes on easy mode. The clouds part, you see the second coming of Jesus, yeah, and everything's great, right? That's how everything is supposed to be, And if you, and even some of these sayings that we hear people say all the time, if you're not having fun, then it's not worth it, and stuff like that. It's like, do you understand how hard it is to do something that is meaningful? That
Let me ask you
is,
this, Dr. Thunder. These people that say these kinds of things, okay? I know, I notice them. And I know that they don't have easy lives, right? You know what? Like, for example, the people who always going around, like, living their best life, who are always like, oh, I do me and da, 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 da. I'm picturing an African American woman for some reason, but anyways, no shade. I always gotta throw in a little bit of misogynoir in the mix. A little bit of misogynoir in the mix every now and again to keep things spicy. But that whole idea of I do me, if it's not easy, it's not worth it. Just do. I'm living my best life. Approach whatever all this crap. Now, what I'm thinking and what you're saying is, dude, like, haven't you been around this planet for a while? Like, dude, life is crazy. Life is chaos. Life is like all that kind of stuff, right? But the thing is, you look at their lives, and their lives are crazier than yours. Their lives are harder than yours. Their lives are more chaotic than yours. And you're wondering, like, what's wrong with these people? Like, they're in the midst of crap constantly, but they keep on talking about this kind of like, oh my God, airy fairy, like they've ever experienced that, ever. What's going on there? It could be, let's say, they just, I don't, let me not give options. Like, what do you think is going on there with these people?
Yeah, so as you were talking, maybe they think that they actually have faith, or actually have a revelation. They're tapped into the deeper thing. And so that's why they can talk about this in this sort of effortless manner, but really they're still doing all the work. Now, I do think that there is something to not focusing on the hard stuff. Oh, no, that's wrong. That's not what I mean to say. On how hard something is going to be. That's what I mean to say. Not focusing on how hard it's going to be. But I think that you have to first at least be aware that this thing is going to be continuously hard, so that when it is continuously hard and it never lets up, you don't start questioning, your purpose in life, and you don't start going through these like dramatic, what do they call it, midlife crisis. You don't start going through these huge questioning the existence of, whatever. Was I ever supposed to be doing this? I feel like I've wasted my life doing all of this. Well, the thing is you thought it was supposed to go to easy mode, and it was never supposed to go to easy mode. Look, this is look, the Bible says that, if you don't work, you don't eat. One of the curses for mankind was sweat from the brow. The toiling and ever laboring. That is one of the. I mean, you could, a curse. You could say it's a prescription. This is what things are going to be in this existence. This is a fact of existence. You're going to be struggling. There is no easy mode, and that's what this life is. And then it's not fair, because it does seem like some people do have easy mode. They're filthy rich, and so seems like their life is on easy mode or whatever. And maybe we have a different perception of things. More money, more problems, right? So maybe we don't have a perception of what their struggles are. But even if that is the case, I was listening to Bernard this morning, Bernard Riley, and Bernard and Red Sings the Blues actually were special guests on Case Closed this past Sunday. That was a very lively and very, very much supported show. Folks really came
go check it out.
and
Dr.
supported the
Thunder's
show.
channel.
Yeah, and we'll be on Ike's channel this coming Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Bernard has said that he wants to come back, so I know that's a lock. And then we should have Dana back on that that show.
If we, for sure. If we go with the plan of what she said she wanted to talk about,
Yeah.
weeks,
And I think LAR actually, I think is going to be around too, right?
Yep.
So that'll be a great show. But something that Bernard started talking about was this, and he noted that it seems like it's black folks that seem to throw this around more than anyone, and that is just this idea of karma. What goes around comes around. That whole, and the reason that he was citing it is because Vivica Fox, in another display of poor taste and dancing on the grave of Kevin Samuels, was suggesting that he basically got what he deserved, and here's karma for you. You got to be careful when you put that karma out there. This is the kind of thing that she's saying. And
okay, I guess we just have to wait for her to die then, and then we'll
right. Right. And so the thing about that, the karma thing, is that Donovan Sharp, I remember his assessment of karma is he thinks it's not real. It's phony. It's not a true thing. And he said, and the evidence that it's not true is the dating market.
Yeah.
Okay. If there was a sense of fairness, if there was a sense of, stuff tends to balance, then certainly the dating market wouldn't be in the state that it's in, which is an interesting critique, and I think is pretty persuasive. And Bernard was saying, and then I think Uncle Stu came up on his panel, and he was talking about, well, look, karma is not that's not a it's not a Christian sort of conception, right? Now, yeah, and I understand what people mean, that if you're sort of open to good things happening, you have a positive attitude and all that kind of stuff, and to that extent, I'm okay with that. But in the sense that Vivica was using it, Bernard's criticism of that is like, well, but what if some young person is mutilated or something, are we saying that that's, oh, there you go, there's their karma? Because if everything happens right, if you're deserving basically anything that happens to you. There's a lot of funky stuff that happens to people, and we don't have explanations for all of it. There's no rhyme or reason often. So, I mean, the fact that there is a small percentage of folks that are filthy rich that have more money than like the bottom 80% or something like that. That seems to be, is that karma? They were just that good. And we were just that bad, so it's just so all of that stuff I just think is hogwash. But I think a lot of folks sort of, in a sense, they co-sign that, and so then when things don't go on, like I said, on easy mode, then they start questioning all of this stuff. It's like, well,
yeah.
I'm doing positive stuff, X, Y, and Z. Why is this stuff why is the universe not, bringing it back to me, and then of course the counsel to someone else that is even more of a diehard, follower of this karma principle will say, well, you just have to wait. Time will tell.
Interesting.
So that kind of stuff, I just, I don't know.
You see,
I just
there are
don't
many
buy
places
any
where
of that stuff.
there are many places where this kind of thing manifests itself. Okay, and I'm going to give some examples, but before I do that, let me go ahead and recognize the super chat. All right, Brandon Sample, $20. Thank you very much. Love listening to y'all too, meaning TWO. Love listening to y'all too. Much love, Ike and Dr. Thunder. Well, much love to you. Much love to you indeed. Thank you very much. Now, here's the thing. The part that I'm quite guilty of is in when I talk about concepts like karma, which I don't necessarily use the word for. I wouldn't say it that way, right? But a lot of times I'm talking about things that like I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of being a scholar, Dr. Thunder, right? So I'm talking about things that only maybe like less than 1% of people can actually understand. Not because they're difficult, okay? It's not because they're difficult to understand, okay? Like you can go to my meditation playlist, for example, and you can listen to me break down certain things. It's not hard. I'm using regular words. But people just don't go certain places in their minds, if you know what I mean, Dr. Thunder. Like, and it's an effort thing, I think. I think it's an effort thing, okay? They're not just going to sit there calmly and focus and get to certain places, okay? My contention is if they get there, okay, they're not going to be on easy street for sure, okay, but they're going to reap certain benefits that I think is worth it, let's say, and they're going to put themselves in a situation to be able to benefit from opportunities that come their way, okay? This is similar to similar to karma, let's say, right? The mistake I'm making is that the people are not going to take the initial effort to even understand what the hell I'm saying in the first place. So like, it's not.
Yeah. Look. That's that hidden in plain sight principle. I started to say this earlier, and that is, I'm very generous with my students, but I realize that such a small percentage of my students are going to actually do all the effort necessary to really, weaponize, as it were, this information, to really make it, expand as it could, because it's too hard. It's too hard. They're not going, most people are not. I mean, every once in a while I get a student that's eating everything up and doing all the extra work and stuff like that. But that's not, that's the anomaly. That, Most of it is, kids that, they want to do music and they've got some natural ability and all of that. And they're willing to put, a certain amount of effort in, enough to, to do what they need to do. And they're improving and all that. That's great. But the real stuff that I could actually impart, almost nobody gets to that stuff because it's too hard. It's too hard.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. We'll continue the video in a second. The one last one that pisses me off is when people try to talk about waiting to be ready to put in effort. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't even know where to start. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this now. One of the more vivid conversations I remember was back in college when somebody was telling me that it doesn't matter what it was. I was telling him. I know what I was telling him, but it doesn't really matter. And I was like, okay, cool. You need to. Okay, cool. How do you do this? I'm like, okay, cool. Oh, cool, great. Let me tell you. You do this, you do this, you do this, and then you do that. And it's like, okay, cool. Okay, well, I think he literally said that he's gonna do that after he gets married and settles down.
Oh,
This
yeah.
nigga, he literally told me that he was gonna start. Oh, you know what? Let me take care of this first. Now, forget the fact that marrying and settle down is just adding the whole massive plate of crap. You're free. You're in college right now, okay? Like, and I'm telling you to put in this effort to get this thing done, and you're telling me, oh, you know what? I'll get it when I get to that other side. Okay. Now it's crazy because it's extra effort that you're putting extra crap on your plate, and then you say you're going to be ready. That's number one. But then number two, there is no such thing as being ready to put in effort. It's never going to happen, bro. You're always going to need to force yourself.
Yeah, my dad always would tell me, he said, you can either work now or you can work later. Okay. But implied in the work now or work later is that working later is always harder.
Yep. Inflation and compound interest. Go ahead.
That's right. That's right.
Effort put in yesterday is always worth more than effort put in today due to compounding.
Oh, that's right. A good idea today is better than a great idea tomorrow. Right?
There you go. Right.
Get something moving. Get yourself happening. You don't have to wait for the best idea. Okay. I mean, that's a bit of a tangent. But another part that's sort of hidden in the statement is as you get older, you'll get to a point where you can't actually work as hard because your body can't handle it. Your mind can't handle it. You just can't handle spending as many continuous hours doing something. Right. Mm-hmm. So it'll be harder from that perspective. My son had a baseball game today and, it's, he's 8 years old. So, this is his second season of baseball. He's having a good time. And I try to remind him sometimes that he's supposed to be having fun because he's very, very competitive. He doesn't like to lose. And if something happens, it's not, I have to there's a lot of psychology that I try to use when I'm talking to him every time he comes back, to the dugout, where I'm standing nearby. But anyhow, he's, jumping on the ground and stuff. These kids are out here sliding into the base when there's no reason to slide into any base because the ball is nowhere near them. But that's just, it's fun, and they don't think of it as effort. And that's because it's like their bones are softer, they're more malleable, bendy and stuff like this. So it doesn't seem like work, right? Because their body can handle it. They're just, my son, he'll take a wicket spill and jumps up. Yeah, let's keep going. If that happened to me, I wouldn't be jumping back up. I'd still be down there, So what I'm saying is you think it's going to be easier later? No, everything's harder. Gravity has a worse impact on you as you get older. everything is worse. And then the time commitments. I love the thing that you said about, you know, you just heaped a bunch of extra stuff on your plate by saying, okay, I'll be married and kids and stuff like this. Now let me try to take on this other thing. Look, you know, one thing I tell my students frequently is, look, right now is the time where you're going to have the most time to practice in your whole life. It's not even close. It's not even close. So if you think that somehow, you know, these other classes and stuff that you're taking and all like that, if you think that's a good excuse for why you're not practicing the amount that you should be right now, for this 4 years where you get to actually focus on your personal improvement, and you don't have a mortgage to pay, you don't have light bill, you don't have, you know, crying kids, you don't have, you know, you don't have none of that stuff. You don't have a 9 to 5, you don't have, okay, look, this is when you need to be doing it. Get it in right now. This is the time to get this happening. It's never going to get easier. Really? You think it's going to get easier if you know, quote unquote, properly time it? You know, see, the thing is, folks get into the man. I'll tell you, it's just the depths of trying to find some clever way so that you don't have to do work is astounding, amazing to me. Like, you know, the you know, there's this whole school of thought on the timing, you know, like, it's just not time to do that yet. You know, you got to have the right timing. It's got to fit in there just right. I'm sorry, man. That has not been my experience. Nope. My experience has been, you have to make time for stuff. You got to cram it in there. Look, it's not going to be a better time later. It's just not.
Many relationships fall apart because of this thing where people are not understanding that effort needs to be put in. In other words, that everything is work, as you mentioned earlier, right? That it is work. There is no coasting in any aspect of life, right? And then B, thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll just I'll start putting in effort or put in time when the time comes, right? or whatever it is, right? And of course, men are the ones that are guilty of it. Now, I already did my misogyny thing before. Now let's focus on men a little bit. Men are the ones that typically will be like more like, it's just let things relationship-wise be on cruise control. Why? Because that's just how we are. That's how we handle our relationships, right? It's on cruise control. It's about what the effort is. Like, okay, we're digging a ditch, and then we're digging a ditch, and then when we're done digging a ditch, that's it. Okay, I'm gonna have to put an effort into the relationship. Wait till the next task, right? But that's not how it's going to work if you're in a relationship with a woman, right? You're going to need to find in that extra 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 seconds even. And here's the thing, okay, for dudes out there, it's not about the actual time, okay? it's not about the 15 seconds or 15 hours. It doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. But let's not completely derail ourselves here, okay? But I don't know if you were landing the plane here on this time thing while I interrupted you to add this relationship aspect.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible, just the extent to which folks will try to find a way, and it's like, if you just from the jump just started working, you would have had less effort in it than to try to think of all of these, approaches to lessen the amount of work.
Exactly.
Just start doing it.
There's so many places where this plays itself over. I mean, I was doing the last few Thursdays. Okay, I've been focusing on understanding the markets, right? Just kind of sharing knowledge about both short-term technical analysis in the market and then long-term, macro, all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to continue to do that. Seems like it's useful information for people, right? Every Thursday. So one thing that is very clear in the markets is there is nothing. For example, what should Ike and Dr. Thunder do with regards to Bitcoin right now is completely dependent on what Ike and Dr. Thunder did with regards to Bitcoin in the past. If you bought Bitcoin when Bitcoin was $10, okay, you're in a completely different situation as somebody who's never gotten it, right? So somebody who's been accumulating Bitcoin since when it was $10, what should they do? They should just chill. They shouldn't sell anything because it's freaking $31,000 right now. Okay, don't just chill. Okay, it'll go back up presumably. Somebody who bought last year, someone who bought 2 weeks, somebody who bought at 60,000, for example, they're in a different kind of hole, right? If you bought it at 60 grand and now it's 30, that's pretty bad. If you bought it at 10 and now you get my point, right? It all depends on what you did in the past. It's not just some kind of like, what do I do now type stuff. Hence the point being, just start doing stuff right now, right? When I started buying Bitcoin, to continue with the example, right, in 2020, because I was like, you know what, no opportunities. Like, it was a great opportunity, number one, but I wasn't hanging around waiting for a lower price or thinking or trying to overthink it. I was just like, okay, cool. This is a good opportunity. Market has dropped. Let me get in. And it paid off in a certain kind of way. And as a result, now what I should do with regards to my whatever I have, Bitcoin wise or Ethereum or all the other kind of stuff, is based on the fact that I've started doing work in the past. Anyways, this whole idea of compounding of your efforts is reflected in many, many different aspects. I mean, we did a stream a long time ago talking about sweat equity, right? Sweat equity. And sweat equity, when you're young, when you got all that sweat to burn, right, will definitely pay off big time in the future. Get that college degree, start this, start that, do whatever, put in the effort. As you said, practice. This is the time that you're going to have the most time to practice in your life, and all that effort will compound in the future. Let's continue the video, but we took quite a long pause there to comment on it. So let me just bring us back up to speed, okay? Shout out to everyone in the chat, by the way. Go ahead and click the like button and share the stream. Go ahead and share it on all social media platforms. Text it out, email it out. Go ahead, put the link out there. Now, this is about stress-free productivity. The main idea is, hey, the reason you're stressed is because you got stuff in your head, okay? You need to take it out of your head and put it in a system. What's a system? Well, a calendar is one such thing. A list is one such thing. An appointment, call, make the appointment, get it in a system, okay? And then it's out of your head, and hence the stress is reduced. And he calls it being appropriately engaged with the problem. Being appropriately engaged equals it's in a system. Inappropriate engagement means it's not in a system, meaning it's in your head. And if it's in your head, you're stressed. So that's his spiel so far. And we had points of contention and disagreement in the sense that he's out here selling. It's a TED Talk after all. He's selling the market and they're making it seem easy. And if you just, you know what, you're going to go through these few efforts and then it's going to get easier and blah, blah, blah. So let's let Mr. Allen continue.
Is a key element to a successful life. Now, I'm going to reinforce why I think this is critical, what it would look like if you were wildly successful doing this, and I'm going to give you some how to do that. But what's the problem? The problem is when you're not in crisis. There's a more subliminal crisis that happens. Why? The whole world now is allowed into your psyche. You now get to experience all the stuff you would, could, should, need to, might, ought to, all the stuff piling up in your in-baskets and emails while I'm speaking right now. All of that now floods into your psyche. And that can easily create a sense.
I like this, by the way, what he just mentioned, in the sense that if you put something in the system, it narrows the scope of it. It's like, it's going to happen on Tuesday, right, Dr. Thunder? It's on the calendar for Tuesday. But if it's not on the calendar for Tuesday, it could be Wednesday, it could be next week, it could be next year. Like, it's chaos, right? It's this kind of nebulous, crazy cloud of possibilities and quantum mechanics going on. But when it's on the calendar for Tuesday, boom, it's super narrow now. It's going to happen on Tuesday at noon.
Sense of overwhelm, a sense of confusion, a sense of conflict. Every single thing seems to demand equal kind of attention for you. And then you usually respond to that by either numbing out or getting into crazy busy. And then you blame that stress on the lack of time. Oh, I just had, oh God, it's all I need is more time. Well, I'm sorry. Leonardo da Vinci, Thomas Jefferson, Einstein, Mother Teresa, they only had 24 hours. Johann Sebastian Bach only had 24 hours. I know he didn't have email, but he had 20 kids. and you say, just give me 2 more hours, David, 2 more hours, please. You know what you'd do with 2 more hours? You'd have 2 more hours of overwhelm and stickiness. Actually, for most of you, it'd be a good thing you don't get 2 more hours. Because the issue is not time.
He used that term stickiness, which I use to describe something similar, which is, that inability to desegregate or disaggregate stuff. And he's using it here within the context of the things you have to do. If you put it in a rail, put it in a system, then it's narrow. It's step by step. You don't have to worry about it sticking to everything else. It's on Tuesday, so you don't have to worry about, well, is it going to be on Wednesday, but my mother's birthday appointment and blah, blah, blah. It's not sticking to your mother's birthday anymore because it's not. It doesn't matter. It's in its own basket. Okay.
How long does it take to have a creative idea? 0 time. How long does it take to be inspired? 0 time. How long does it take to recognize an opportunity you could leverage or take advantage of? 0 time. Time is not the issue for those things. There is something required for those things. What's that? Psychic bandwidth. You need space to think. Believe me, every executive I coach, once I put those words on, yes, I need room to think. I need space to be able to be creative, be innovative, all that stuff I'm being tasked to do, to be a leader, all that stuff. I just need room. And if you don't have psychological space, you could have 2 hours of free time and waste it. If you do have psychic bandwidth, 2 minutes in an elevator, you can have a cool idea and have a fabulous relationship with somebody that moves the needle. So this is the real key issue here, is the lack of the bandwidth to be able to engage with that appropriately. Even worse than that is that our creative energy is then not available to be creative. Our creative energy is being used to try to patch up and handle and try to remember and remind and try to do all that stuff that most people are trying to manage all the details and stuff of their life in their psyche instead of in a system. Just trying to keep up with the mess. And by the way, life is messy if you haven't noticed. Actually, mess is cool. Actually, the most productive times I am is when I have the freedom to make a creative mess. You too. I need room to be crazy, to make some mistakes, to brainstorm, to be chaotic, go a little off the edge. That is going to be your most productive time, is when you have that kind of freedom to do that. However, folks, if you're already in a mess, you ain't got room to make one. If your kitchen's a mess, you don't have time or the energy to have a creative dinner for your friends. If your desk and your office are a mess, you don't have room and space to be crazy about some new project and spread out and have brainstorm with ideas. If your email is backed up on you with 1,000 unprocessed emails and you got 3,000 other things going on in your head, you have no space to take advantage of discretionary time that may show up in terms of being creative, in terms of your energy. The results of that, if you're trying to use your psyche to manage that mess and you never get out of it, is you get the results of 2 things that are the critical elements of self and organizational productivity. You'll lose perspective. That is, you lose the ability to put your focus where you need it on exactly the thing you need it at the horizon you need it. And or you may be experiencing the results of what happens when you lose control. That is, I now don't have stability and I don't have the freedom in my head to be able to put the appropriate attention and execute on it when I do. So those are the 2 key elements. Folks, you can't manage time. You don't mismanage 5 minutes and come up with 6. The only time that you think you need time management is when one or both of these 2 dynamics is suboptimal. Either things need to be more under control or more appropriately focused. If you map those 2 things together, what do you get? If you, on the bottom left here, we got no control and no focus. Ever been there? That's your basic victim experience. Driven by latest and loudest. For the most part, most of us are thrown there by our own overcommitments and creativity. We're just trying to come up for air. Now, if that part of you shows up that has high focus and perspective, but no control, now you're the mad scientist. Now you're the desperate artiste. Now you're the crazy maker with all kinds of crazy ideas and no constraints of what you're doing. You're nothing very well organized. Middle of the morning, you decide to go buy the new iPhone, but your IT department won't support it. On the other hand, you can get down in the weeds and say, oh, wait, I need to get 10,000 things organized. I need to get all this cleaned up. And now you get into micromanagement. If you don't have appropriate focus, you can get down in those weeds and hung up in them like crazy. And you spend a lot of time doing a lot of trying to get organized about things that may not be that important. Right? In the morning, your crazy maker said, get a new iPhone. In the afternoon, you spend 2 hours of what could be a strategic afternoon trying to set up the right ringtones. Here's what's true about all 3 of those, folks. You ain't ready for what's coming towards you. You will be suboptimal in terms of your ability to handle the surprises, and they're coming. Good, bad, or indifferent, they're coming, trust me. And you want to be optimally available for those things when they come to you. Now, everybody says, I'm doing okay. And I doubt if many of you in here will feel motivated enough to go do what I'm talking about, because some part of you may not be feeling that it's that bad. Because you got a job, or you're doing fine. You got relationships, you got money, you're doing okay. I'm suggesting, though, for thousands of people who've implemented what I'm sharing with you here, it could be a whole lot better. How sustainable is your life and work style right now in terms of the long haul? How available are you to all kinds of creative things that are right around you right now, but you don't have the bandwidth to recognize them or take advantage of them? And it could be a whole lot better. What would better actually look or sound like? Well, I use a metaphor from nature.
Okay. It would seem that we're progressing from the capture it in a system, right? Capture it in a system so it's not in your head, so that when it's not in your head, you have the bandwidth, so that when it's not in your head, you have the stress-free type of ability. Okay, so we were not disagreeing, generally speaking, that you have to have a system. Now we're moving into the organizational aspect of it. Okay, this is what I sense. This is what I see. Okay, in other words, first you got to capture, but then you got to organize. Okay, and you got to kind of make decisions. But before we let him continue, there's a general thing that just came into mind here with regards to being organized, because that is, obviously also implied in the capture part, right? Capturing it, putting it in the calendar, putting it in a list. That is a more organized way of doing things rather than keeping it in a nebulous cloud in your head. And then I thought, isn't organization something that's kind of like static? Like, is that something that you could tell somebody, boom, be organized, and then we can set it and forget it, right? Isn't Dr. Thunder wrong? Can we catch Dr. Thunder there? And then I just realized, like, nah, you do got to organize. You do got to keep on being organized, right? Organized is not just, be organized. It's like, no, you got to be organized today and tomorrow and next week. And you do got to come into that room and reorganize it. Go to that desktop on your computer and reorganize it. Go to your calendar even and reorganize it, right? Or is organization, two things I'm asking you here. Has organization is it a more natural thing from you comparatively, right? With compared to other people? And then is it a set it and forget it type of thing? Or, you still got to come back and re-up on that organization, got to come back and put in effort on that organization, both psychologically and otherwise?
Yeah, I'm not a naturally organized person. So, all of my, I'm a creative, right? But I recognize that in order to facilitate greater creativity, I had to become more organized, and so I embraced the organization thing and started becoming more organized. I mean, I still have a lot of things to work on. My desk tends to get really cluttered. I have a lot of stuff. I probably could get rid of a lot of stuff, but I recognize that as a problem, and I'm willing to consider, and do frequently reorganize things to create less drag on the creativity, so one of the things I was going to say earlier too was, one of the things it seems that some of these students of mine that are creatives, it's like, well, if I do a degree in music, but in particular, if I do a degree in jazz, where it's highly improvised and, this kind of thing, right? Then perhaps I can hide, you hiding from doing all of those necessary things that make anyone great at any discipline. I mean, it really boils down to the same sort of short list of things that folks have to be really good at in order to be good in their discipline, right? The discipline is different. The actual skill set is different, but the sort of qualities that you have to develop in yourself, the things that you have to overcome about your nature are really the same things. I tell my students what makes a great lawyer or a great doctor or great engineer is the same thing that makes a great musician. It's the same. It's the same thing, and without sort of repeating what we've already said, the effort has a lot to do with it. So,
now it seems like we're gonna probably have a part 3 of this, because he hasn't landed the plane yet, and he's actually looking at the video. It seems like he's about 2/3 of the way, of landing the plane, right? And it seems like we're not missing anything that he's saying, because we did review his book before, the whole Getting Things Done, and he is repeating the process of, hey, you know what? And the main idea, I would say, if there's any kind of main idea from this book, is that whole thing about getting it out of your head, right? For me, anyways. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah. Get it out of your head and put it in the system, and then revise the system so you can trust the system, because if you trust the system, then you don't have the stress, right? And this is true. I want to ask a question about so obviously, inevitably, when you're out there working as hard as you're going to need to work in order to put in the kinds of effort you need to put in to be successful in any way, shape, or form, it's going to rub up against other commitments vis-a-vis specific, usually relationship type commitments. Let's just call it that, right? And people are going to say to you certain things. This is more like let's just call it a piece of advice now. People are going to say to you, you know what? Life is not just all, go, go, go. There's ups and downs and stuff like that. You're going to need to slow down, stop and breathe. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. He was working, maybe he was working too hard and drinking those Red Bulls and not sleeping enough, right? Was it worth it? Sure, you got millions of dollars in the bank, and then boom, you go out. You didn't even smell the roses, that kind of a thing. Blah, 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 so on and so forth. Okay. Now, the tendency for me is to just roll my eyes, right? And oh my God, here we go again. Number one. No, because here's what I know is that I know that the ups and downs of life are going to be there regardless of me acting as though I was the one planning it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, last week, I still have an ankle issue right now. Surprised I was able to travel with it, right? So Achilles heel, ankle, whatever, call it whatever you want to call it. It's getting better, by the way. I think we're good in terms of directionality, but it's not completely gone yet. So last week was a more chill week for me. I had my leg on ice. I wasn't working as hard, right? I was relaxing. Now I was still working and all of that, but that is an example of one of those times when things slow down. And I don't have to, and these things happen in and of themselves, of their own accord. I don't have to start pushing pause. And if I had complete control of my life and I could be like, oh, I peak now and then I trough now, I peak now, I trough now, I know I don't have that kind of control. Okay? Things are going to happen. But this is not the response you give somebody. This is in your head. You know that. But here is where the positivity would come in from the kinds of thing that person told me. The person has told me, okay, cool. You need to slow down. You need to be able to. Now, what I'm thinking based on that, and it ties in with what we just said, is I need to create a system. I'm like, oh, you know what? I am working too hard. So let me 10x this company so that I can get more employees, make a lot more money, and presumably work less, right? Presumably, okay? Because, but that will be the positive, or shall we say, the self-critical. Okay, let me not confuse the audience. What I'm doing right now is being self-critical. Somebody tells me that I'm working too much and that I need to organize myself in a certain way. Life goes up and down. And I know that's all cap. Life is chaos. I'm going to keep working anyways. And, the times of the slowdown and the speed up, that's not up to me. The feasts and the famine, not completely up to me. So, and those things are going to happen anyways. But then the real self-critical aspect comes in when you say, you know what, these people are correct. Because I know there are ways for me to be more efficient. There are ways for me to build a system, okay, whereby I can free up some of my efforts a little bit more. And it came to mind because it's all this about systems thing, right? So people are always right in that regard. And you don't have to argue with them and say, hey, you know what? Because again, we're talking about within the context of relationships. And a lot of times within the context of relationships, it's not about these tit for tat. It's not about what is right, you know, or it is about, especially when it comes to the fact that, you know, relationships are gonna an aspect of it is meant to improve you, right? It is about taking in, you know what? Yes, I could um, set things up more so that I am quote unquote working less, even though I know in the back of my head I'm not gonna be working less. But I can take what they're saying and use it as part of fuel to be like, yeah, you know what? I do need to organize this thing a little bit differently. And then say, you know what? I'm going to put in the extra effort to build the engine, build the system so that I can relax more. I don't know if any of that, if you had any comments on that, because there wasn't a direct question. There are many questions layered in there about people telling you that you're doing work, and then you can take it in and then be self-reflective, doing too much work, be self-reflective and actually use their criticism to your benefit to continue to do the crazy work because you're a workaholic that you love to do anyways. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, working your way out of a job. That's what people used to call that. I kind of mentioned this, not in a direct sense, but when I was like, I could try to protect my own gigs in town from my students, or I could realize that I should be moving on to other gigs, right? And I think if you are one of the lucky ones, as it were, that has the ability, the capability of climbing up to the top of that pyramid that you hear me talking about, where at the bottom of the pyramid, you have to do everything that everyone asks you to do. You have to say yes to everyone. You're broke. You ain't got no money. You ain't got X, Y, and Z, right? So you have to know how to do a lot of different things. And then the top of the pyramid is where you're doing the one thing that only you can do, perhaps that only you can do on Earth, that you're the only person on Earth that can do that, right? And there's a more of a simplicity, not simplicity. That's the wrong word. It's more simple. Simple's different than simplistic, right? Simplistic is like even a second grader can understand it, right? Simple means maybe essential, right? More like essential, like distilled down to its, still profound but distilled, right? And yeah, I mean, if you can get to that place, then yeah, a lot of that, it seems like a lot of that other stuff sort of works itself out by itself. And as you get older, you're not going to be able to take on so much stuff, because at one point your body will not be able to handle it, right? You won't be able to do it. So in one sense, it's a necessary progression.
It does make sense, especially given the fact that you mentioned the energy you have to burn and the time you have to burn when you are young. You have the energy and you have the time. A lot of fuel is used. Think about 30%. Don't quote me on this. Well, obviously, it depends on how long the flight is. But your typical flight, about 30% of the energy, the fuel, is used in takeoff. And if you're wondering, well, why that is, well, just slide your hand on the floor, right, at 5 miles per hour, and then glide your hands in the air at 5 miles per hour. Like, oh, okay. One's a lot easier, right? So once you leave
Right,
the
right.
ground, yeah, things get a lot easier. Plus, also when you're starting from zero, things tend to be harder, right? Inertia,
Right.
it is called. Okay. So all these things make it such that it maps onto this aspect of, okay, go ahead and put in the effort, burn those hours and those and the time, such that you can gain the altitude, right, and get to the peak, if you will. Uh, it definitely does highlight that point that you got to start now, you got to do it now, and the time you put in now is always will get compounded, right? The effort you put in now will get compounded, and all that kind of stuff. Um, I want to
Yep.
play. Shout out to Mumia Obsidian Ali. Okay, the Mumia Obsidian Ali experience is going down in Philly. Okay, I am going to be dropping the link in my videos for you to go ahead and get your tickets. Also, there's going to be a memorial service, kind of like a private little service thing for uh, KS. Shout out to KS, rest in peace. And this will be in Philly in June. I'll be there. Bernard Riley will be there. Obsidian will be there. Dennis Sperling will be there. Um, Let me go ahead and play this little jingle here, and then I will drop the link for where you can get your tickets. All right. There you go, Manosphere 2.0 conference, Mumia. I don't know why I keep going Mumedian. I don't know. I think of Meridian, whatever it may be. But Mumia Obsidian Ali, June, Philly. Okay. So more information to come. I will be there talking about the things that men need to do in the international market space and some other things, okay, in order to thrive, right? Again, myself, Bernard Riley, also will be having, a service for KS. Well, Mr. Thunder, Mr. Sean Wallace, Dr. Thunder, what you got going on your channel? You still gigging such that you're not doing Thunder's Thoughts this Thursday or what?
Yeah, I should be doing a Thunder's Thoughts this Thursday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't have the show worked out yet. I think I'm going to have a guest co-host,
Mhm.
and so I'm working on that. So 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. That's one thing. A couple other pretty cool things are going down this week. One of them is I am closing in on episode 200 of Conversations with Dr. Thunder. And episode 199 will be premiering on my channel Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will be with Grammy Award winner Taylor Eichste, who I've interviewed before. This will be our second interview. This is freshly just won this award. Wanted to bring him back, and it's interesting because we talked about the project on our first interview that he won the Grammy for. So we'll talk on that. That's going to be really cool. Taylor Eichste, he's a virtuoso jazz pianist. And then on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, episode 200 with Rollo Tomasi. And
Whoa, you got Rolo.
I got
That should be
Rollo.
fun.
So yeah, so I interviewed him actually last night. It was a great talk, a great conversation, and we talked about music and marriage and manosphere, and it was a very deep, thought-provoking conversation. Really, really great. And I actually I solicited a few questions from Green Gorilla, from Mumia Obsidian Ali, and from BGS Ibmore. And I asked him those questions in addition to my, of course, my my questions. So very interesting conversation. I think folks will really enjoy that. He was very gracious, agreeing to do the interview and everything. Actually, the way that it transpired is he started following me on Instagram. And I noticed that he started following me, and so I shot him a message and said, "Hey, thanks for the follow." X, Y, and Z.
Because of your hot licks, or was it the muscles?
Actually, it was the hot licks. He's a musician, guitar player. He plays bass also, but he's primarily a guitar player. And we talked about that. We talked about his guitar collection. We talked about his, being a gear junkie. His guitar, spending time at Guitar Center, and all kinds of stuff. Some sort of, some of it is a little bit jargony. He really understands, he understands music, he understands gear, equipment, a lot of the stuff that we were talking about. So that was very, I felt at home. We talked about the movie Whiplash at one point in our conversation also. And then, the rest of the conversation was about, usual, probably somewhat usual topics that you expect Rollo to discuss. I had some tweaks and different perspectives on some of the stuff that he talks about, and we were able to dig into that. So anyhow, I'm super excited that happened, and yeah, I think it's great symmetry. Episode 200 with Rollo Tomasi, one of the Godfathers, as R.I.P. Kevin Samuels, our other Godfather, has passed away. Of course, we talked about Kevin, and it's good stuff. So I'm looking forward. Please, folks, come and check it out. The last thing I'm gonna pub is I just started a new YouTube channel. It's called Dr. Thunder Convo. Dr. Thunder Convo. So you can check me out there. And what I did actually all day today, starting at 10 a.m., I re-premiered the first 10 episodes of the Quarantine Interviews, which is the first 50 episodes of the Conversations with Dr. Thunder series. So, and it's about 2 years later, right? It's 2022. We're in April now. I started that interview series in March of 2020. So, so that's happening, and I'm going to try to keep that going, probably each day, to have about 12 hours or so of premiere videos playing on that channel. So that's going to happen, and yeah, stuff's moving.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. That should be interesting. Yeah, there's those channels where you just have, the backlog of content playing. That's interesting. I was thinking about that recently, but yeah, that'll be nice. I will check it out. You said Dr. Thunder Convo. That's the name of the channel,
Yeah,
right?
Dr. Thunder Convo. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and check that out. Okay. Now, I remember listening to some of those during the time when you were actually, in 2020, when you were actually doing these, and or maybe it was 2021. I don't know, but it was the pandemic was just starting, right? And
Right.
musicians talking about how it is affecting their gigs, how people are now learning to use Zoom, how
Yep.
um,
Yep.
putting content out there is now important as a creative and all those kinds of things. And looking back, comparing, seeing some of the predictions that people made right back then and how they may or may not have come to fruition, right? It would be interesting, right? Because I think the arc from 2020 till now is an interesting one. Um, for one thing, it's perfect mirror of what what the markets are doing right now. Also did the same thing in 2020, right? Uh, but that is a separate conversation. But another opportunity to buy the dip, ladies and gentlemen, another opportunity to buy the dip in the market. If of anything in particular that you've been eyeing and spotting and thinking, hey, I would like to be on this train. Well, you know what? The barrier to entry for that train, whatever it may be, just lowered because the price of most equities and cryptos and everything has gone down. But, ladies and gentlemen, I will be here tomorrow, hopefully with a camera. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. I set it up. I am in Africa, okay, for the next 5 weeks or so. And I have a new
Ashy
studio
foot.
here. What would you say?
Ashy foot.
Wow.
That's a minister jab reference.
He's ashy-footed African booty scratching.
Yeah,
You know,
and also struggle streaming, low budget. I don't know, whatever you want. All of that.
yeah,
Good
and yeah, it's gonna be flies right on my eyeball when I
stuff.
tomorrow.
and somehow you won't feel it.
Yeah,
You
it's
won't notice that it's happening.
just oh boy.
Okay.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again for the super chat. Okay, Mr. Brandon Sample, thank you very much for the support. Thank you for those of you who participated in the chat. For those of you who listened quietly, we will be back next week, Tuesday, getting ish done on continuing this particular topic. But until then, there'll be many other shows on this channel. Catch me tomorrow. Catch me on Thursday. Catch us. Case closed this Sunday. Okay. And we may be talking about whether or not the slave master is incompetent. Okay. Is the slave the competent one and the slave master is the incompetent one? Well, he's like, somebody could say, yeah, the slave is competent. The slave knows how to dig the ditches and blah, blah, blah. Well, I guess, well, if he's so competent, how come he's under the master then? So we're going to have a conversation similar to that.
Good old Dana.
I don't know where it'll go. Dana might throw in a wrench or whatever, the curveball at us from somewhere. All of a sudden, we're going to start talking about the Euphrates and Kemet again. But
Oh goodness. Kemet
like,
part 2.
do you know the Euphrates? like,
Now, if I say
the salvation of my go ahead.
right. So let me ask you: if I don't know what the Euphrates is, how does that benefit your argument?
It means you're not. It means you're going to hell.
That's right. Shout out to Dana.
Anyways, shout out to Dana indeed. Now we are out until next time. we are gonna go out with the shorter version of the outro. Okay, no music for y'all. Okay, you guys don't get no music today. Peace out. We're gone.